This is going to be a weedless streamer that kind of looks like a perch. It's on the new Arex kind of Texas Predator hooks. These things are awesome. Yeah, they're one of the best ways to make a weedless fly. The very first step on these guys is you have to keel it correctly, meaning you're going to give it weight down here on the lower section so that it rides hook up. And so you're going to, you know, sink at an even rate and all that stuff. The way I do it is I take a little bit of super glue first and I hit the shank bare where I'm going to be adding the lead. I grab a bit of, well, it's tin, it's non-lead wire. Start right forward of the hook gap there, or the hook point, sorry, and just start wrapping. What this does is it glues the, you know, by putting the glue down first, it now glues the lead right down to the hook. Shouldn't shift around. And we're going to go about halfway up this bend, and then we're going to double back on itself. And then this is a 0.02 thickness. So I'm going to go up to there, and then we're going to double it back on itself. To about there. And then you can just twist your tags off. Uh-oh. Spread that glue around. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of monofilament thread, mainly just so it's clear so you don't see it. Tie it in up front. Clip off my tag. I'm going to get 2 strands of pearl flashaboo, and I'm going to tie them in up top here where I have that thread. Just make sure you get them nice and secure. So now I will take one and kind of get it out of the way, and then we're going to add a little more glue to the lead. Just a tiny bit. Okay. So then you're going to wrap this evenly down, covering the lead. Doesn't have to be pretty. Just cover that lead and give it a little bit of a color hit. Something shiny. Now go back up. Oh, don't let go of it. So we're going to grab our thread back, our monofilament. Fold that guy over. Just secure it. Cut your tag. And now you're going to do the kind of the cleanup wrap with the other one. Lay it right over the top of that one you just did. Just giving it a little more color hit. That color is going to pop a little more every time you wrap it. Kind of cover that lead up. So it's going to go in. And when you bring it back up, secure it. Chop it. Okay. So secure it all down. Make sure it's not going anywhere. I just hitch it like that. Double hitch. Because now we're going to take Bone Dry Plus. And we're going to go ahead and add this so that it just creates a really nice hard shell all the way around this. so that no matter how many fish chew on it, it's not going anywhere. So get your light ready, and then we're just going to kind of lay this on there, give it a nice even coating. And what we're going to do is then spin the hook and have gravity kind of be our buddy. Kind of spread it all around there. Kind of let gravity take over, and then we're going to cure it as we turn it. And this stuff cures really fast. That's kind of why it's nice. And then I'll do 2 coats. So that's my first initial kind of like smoothing out coat, and then this is going to be my second cleanup coat. So then, you know, if you have a drop like that, you can take it, kind of move it around. Just turn it. Just going to evenly distribute itself. Sweet. We'll give that 1 sec to cure, but this stuff goes pretty quick. And then the best part about it is it's not tacky when you cure this stuff. So it's not going to grab material later on while you're tying this fly. So yeah, it's a good product. So there's your keel. Now this is going to actually sink, hook up. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tie in a tail of feathers. I'm going to use strung Chinese saddle hackle for the tail. And this is going to be like a yellow perch color. So we're going to do yellow, orange, and olive. And then we're going to kind of blend those colors together. Lay yourself down a good little base of glue. Give yourself a decent base. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to go straight in here. And I'm going to do 2 yellows and then on either side. So 2 on this side, 2 on this side. Then we're going to go 2 olive. And then we're going to throw 1 orange in just to try and incorporate all the same colors that we're going to use in the head so that it runs throughout the whole fly. So you want your length on these to go past, your overall length to go past the hook, you know, the back of the hook, so that it kind of covers up that bend, or the point in there. So you're going to take 2 yellow in the center, is kind of what I like to do for this colorway. And then we're going to go 2 yellow in the center on the other side. So there's your first ones. And then I like to do the orange on the inside of that. 1 on each side. Come on. So I'm going to do a wrap underneath these feathers too. Lift them, kind of pin them up, and then pin them back down. And see, now that puts them at a different angle now, so that they're going to sit in the right way that we want them to sit. And now we're going to kind of cloak those colors that are on the inside with some olive on the outside. So it's going to give it more profile, and the colors that we want are still going to show through a little bit. So now 2 on each side. So we did 2 yellows on each side, so 4 total. And then we did 1 orange on each side, and then now there's olive here as well. Secure all that. Okay. So that's your tail, and on these hooks in particular, you want to make sure you're not blocking that hook gap or the hook point, so you're going to get as efficient of a hookup rate as you possibly can. So this moves out of the way very easily versus, you know, SF fiber or some other fibers that we use. So that's why we're using this as the tail. So now I'm going to take my first section of bucktail. I'm going to use olive for this. We're going to grab just a little, be very sparse with the bucktail that you do use for this, because it's very easy to use too much. So just grab your bucktail. Go ahead and pull all the small short fibers out. So we'll grab it by the top there, just kind of pull all those shorter fibers out. Thin it out so we get things roughly the same length. So what we're going to do is we're going to reverse tie this in. Well, the first one we're not going to reverse tie, I take that back. First one's going in regular. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a block so that if the fish hits, he's not chewing on the feathers. He's going to have some bucktail to kind of guard your saddle hackle. So when you put this on, I use a very small amount of this at first. And when you put it on the hook, you're actually going to put it on the top and kind of roll it around the hook to evenly distribute it before you secure it. Again, double checking that you're not putting it so far back that you're creating a mass in front of the hook gap. So it's going to end right about there, right in front of the hook gap is where I want my bucktail to kind of end on this tail. So I'm going to put it on there. I'm going to do a very light wrap, one single, almost no tension whatsoever, and then another one around. And that's going to secure all that bucktail down onto that hook shank. So then you just kind of give it a wiggle and just check all your angles that you're distributing it evenly. You got enough on both sides, and you really just need a little, because then when you pull her tight, it's going to do the bucktail thing and flare out like that. So minimal wraps is kind of the key with this fly as well. So you're going to go 1 or 2 more, pull it tight, and then all this extra up front we're just going to trim off. Okay. Anytime you add bucktail to a fly like this, you just want to do a little hit of super glue in there to pin as many fibers in as possible, and then wrap forward slowly, kind of grabbing all those and securing it down with the glue. So now there's glue forced under there, so I kind of take that, roll the excess off. So there's your very first bucktail installment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move ahead and we're going to do 3 bucktail tie-ins. So we're going to do one more right up here about in the middle, and then one more maybe a 1/4, 3/16 of an inch roughly behind the eye, because we don't want to crowd the eye. And in between we're going to add polar chenille. So this polar chenille is kind of going to prop the bucktail up. All this flash is going to show through, and then it's going to look really nice when it's all put together. So the very first thing I'll do is I'm going to I'm going to tie this in, just the tip of this, so it's secure. And I'm going to pin it back, get it all tied in and nice and secure. Oops, come on. And then we're going to move up to the tie-in point of the bucktail, which is only going to be like about halfway up this available shank you have to work with. So grab one of my awesome fly tying tools here, hair clip. And now we're going to grab our second batch of bucktail. Roughly the same amount. Like again, you don't want to use too much. It's very easy to use too much bucktail and make your flies too bulky so that they don't lay down with the right profile. It's all about that after profile. So now you're going to grab kind of the length you want, pinch it, and then pull. So now test your length. So we're going to go for about the ends of the bucktail meeting up with the ends of those bucktails. So I'm going to go just about a 1/2 inch longer than the front one that I just did. And I'm going to trim off a pretty hard edge on that and make it nice and hard. And then we're going to reverse tie this one in. So double check your length again, because I want to say I just cut it too long. I did. It's still a little too long. Trim a little off. So now we're going to do the same thing. One very light wrap going all the way around. And it secures it there and it'll hold it in place. And now there's thread going all the way around it. So now you can take your bucktail and kind of maneuver it before tensioning it down so that it goes all the way around that hook evenly. I need a little more over there. Just kind of force it into the zone you want. A little more on that side. Always check all angles of your fly when you're tying. It's way too easy to just forget about this half of your fly. A couple more. Pull it tight. Now I'm going to go in close and I'm going to trim all this little back end here just to cut it down flat. And then again, since we added bucktail, we're going to tack that bucktail in place with some glue, just a little. Tie back over it, and then again, I just hit it with my fingers to make sure that that super glue is not falling forward and it's in place. It's not like moving forward into your bucktail that you're then going to reverse back. So now you've got this tied in and kind of that space in between needs to be filled. So you're going to use this polar chenille now and you're going to palmer it. As you go back, or as you go forward, you're going to push it back. You can get it pretty, give it a good tug. Get it on there pretty tight. And just palmer it backwards. I like to use a dubbing brush just to hit all those fibers backwards and pull them out and expose them as I'm going so that I don't have to do it later and I can kind of get the general idea of the profile of the fly as I'm working so I don't get to the end of it and I'm like, oh man, I blew it. One more wrap with this. And then we're going to go ahead and pull all that. So then we're going to secure this. Try not to trap that material down there. Cut off your excess. Make sure you've got that secured. And then you're going to take your bucktail, pull it back. And then you're going to secure that with 2 tight wraps right there. And when you pull them, it's going to puff that bucktail out and it's going to give you a lot more volume. I don't know what his problem is today. So now we're going to go up to the front and advance our thread up to the eye, just behind it. So now I'm going to add in one more little bit of bucktail just to give it some more volume. Not that one, we're going to do this one. There we go. We're going to reverse tie it in again. So we're going to pull all that excess out. Roll it, check your length, give it a hard edge.
This one, he's mainly a lad. He's got a little bit in him. He's got more. His mom wasn't. So that's father and son. Fair. He's just a talker.
Don't step on his tail, huh?
He's 11 and he's a little bit younger. He's just a stubborn bear. He's bear. He doesn't do anything else but just sitting there and be like, hey, hey, hey.
You just make sure you know you're there, or he knows you're there.
I think the better thing to think about it is, he just sits over there and he's like, hey, hey, hey. But then he'll come over and he'll find the ball, and he'll be growling at you, wagging his tail, and bring you a ball. He's like, all right, throw it.
Okay. So you're going to splay it out. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to trim off this inside. We're going to make it nice and even. Don't cut your thread.
His mom the same way. You cannot, no matter what you do, you'd be sitting there and she'd just start talking for no apparent reason. You're like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, she's just a pup.
So then we're going to wrap it back, secure it all. And then right where we stopped that other one, we're going to put some more of that Palmer chenille, or the polar chenille, excuse me. There's too many materials out there now. I can't remember what's what. And this is only going to be a couple wraps of this, like maybe 3 wraps. So 1, 2, just to get the color in there and be a filler. I'm going to go, yeah, that's it. That's all we want. Okay, so we're going to go over, over, over. Just pull all that excess, all the trapped fibers out. I'm going to take that bucktail, go back again. Oh, stab yourself a couple times. You're not a fly tire until you've got bloody fingers.
Unfortunately, that's all that we have.
So you're going to pull this pretty tight. And that is actually an ideal zone to be right there. You want about that much room left on your eye and your hook. It's very close as far as like crowding, what I would consider crowding it too much. But we'll be all right here. So we're going to secure all that back. Kind of create a little dam. Oops, too much of a dam. And there we go. So now you've got a decent profile going back to a decent tail. You can still kind of adjust it a little bit before you really crank it and tension it down. So now we're going to do, there's your body and the bulk and everything and your tail. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stack dubbing and make a head. So we're going to do olive on the back, yellow on the underside, and then we're going to give it an orange hit kind of on the chin. Do fish have chins? I think fish have chins. So we're going to stack this dubbing so that all the fibers are going roughly the same length and you get your maximum length out of it. This is the Fly Fish Foods Bruiser blend. So yeah, we're going to stack a little bit. And this is going to be our head. So we're going to tie this in about 60-40, meaning like 60% of it on headed out the back towards the rear end of the fly, and then about 40% on the front. So you want to kind of spread it out a little too so that you get the desired, yeah, so there we go. There's about 60-40 right there. So we're just going to trap it in place first with like 2 really mellow wraps. And then we're going to double check that we have everything in the direction we want it to be. So that's going to be the top, and we're going to do 2 stages of this. So we're going to do that one first, and then we're going to do yellow on the bottom. And I kind of like to pull everything back at the same time in reference to these front portions, like the 40% that I've got sticking out there. I'm going to pull both those back at the same time, so I use minimal thread wraps. So I'm stacking this dubbing again, kind of packing it together, tapering it, and rolling it as I'm pulling it apart to get that length. Okay. So we're going to flip that, and then yellow is going to be the bottom color. Okay. That's stacked enough. So now we're going to pin it on the bottom. Same thing, very light wrap, about 60-40. Get it in the position you want it. And then secure, and then go ahead. What I like to do is I will actually work up with like one wrap of thread to the eye, then work back, and then pin it back, and then move up. So you'll see what I mean. I'm going to pull this forward, pin that right up to the eye, right behind the eye, so there's that little bump right there in the center. Make sure everything's going the direction and the shape I want it, and then I'm going to split these, pin them back like that, and then I can actually work that thread slightly backwards and lightly secure it so it doesn't shift before I pull it tight and actually secure it like I just did. So now that's in place, and you can at this point kind of keep it tight and brush some of that out and blend it together with the rest of your fly to make sure it doesn't look terrible. Flip it, we're going to do that green. Okay. So now we're probably going to use a little more green or a little more olive on the next one. Just making sure that's nice and straight.
Okay.
So there's your first section of profile. So now we're going to grab some more green or olive. It's just green. Stack it again. And this time I've probably got about 50% more than I had last time. But again, it's very easy to overdub these heads and put too much material on these flies in general, which,
Okay, we actually have your wife spinning here.
let's see. Let's see, there we go. So we got one wrap. So now I'm actually, I forgot this part. I'm going to move and advance up to the eye. So we're going to tie everything, the rest of this, right up against that eye. So your wraps make a big difference. So what I'll do is I'm going to just pull this underneath and pin it on top like that.
No, those are part of mine. I appreciate your help. It's my pleasure. Have a great day. You too.
Soft wrap to secure. Now you've got all that in place, and then we're going to flip it. Use the same amount of yellow as you used on the bottom before, because we're going to add one more little hit of orange in right at the end here to kind of give it a little bit of an orange underbite. So same thing, go about 60-40 in the same spot. Two light wraps, and maneuver your dubbing around so that it spreads itself out evenly over the head as best you can. And just double check it. And then you can just pull it back. So get it tight, pull that back. Move your thread out of the way, pull your front back. There we go, just like that. And then just go in front of the eye, or up against the eye in front of the dubbing, and you kind of do a little dam in there. So you're going to dam it up, but it should revert it back, and then we're going to pin it back with Solar Res and make it like 100% even and secure in a second here. So before you tie everything off and finish everything, just make sure that it's relatively even. Well, and you got to put the final color on, which I almost forgot. So, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to run the orange down the side. So we're going to grab a very sparse amount of hot orange, fluorescent hot orange Senyos. And we're going to run this as like a little lateral line going right down the side. We're going to do it the same way we did all the others, where we're going to tie it in, sticking out forward. And this is like a really small amount of dubbing. So this is going to be your like lateral break pretty much. Very light wrap. Just pinning it in place and then fold them back over themselves. Pin them in place again. And there it is. So now, since we're going to glue the heck out of this head, you can pretty much just hitch it off once, honestly. It's going to be all right. I'm going to do 2 just because I can. Cut that. Okay, so now you're going to take your dubbing brush and you're going to blend all this together in a reverse motion, but you're going to try and go in line with the hook shank and kind of pull straight back with that hook shank that's there, because that's a direction that you're going to be pulling it with, you know, against the water and everything. So it's going to be how this material wants to naturally fall. So we're going to brush all that dubbing back, blend those kind of colors together. That's where it really comes out. It starts to look like an actual fish a little bit. So boom. So now we've got our profile like that. So then what we got to do still is we got to give it eyes. So we're going to come in here and we're going to give it some eyes. I'm going to use the Flyman Fish Co. Living Eyes because they're amazing and they look like eyeballs. So these are pretty decent size. I think these are 10 millimeter. So what I'm going to do is pull that eyeball off. I'm going to take a tiny bit of super glue at first and just put a little dab of super glue on the back. And I like to keep, when I'm finishing these heads, I like them to have volume and width so that they push water and move water so that those predators will actually sense it. So I don't push the eyes in really hard. I don't make the head very narrow. I try and keep it almost flared out a little. So I'm going to turn it on its side like this, and I'm going to pin this right behind the eye of the hook and just kind of like tap it on there a couple times and work a little bit of that super glue down into the actual dubbing. And what that's going to do is kind of pin that dubbing in place, and then you end up with that. So we're going to do that on the other side really fast. Little dab of glue. Just tap it. Double check your positioning as far as how high it is, how low it is. And then tack it in place. So now we've got that. Now what we're going to do is, I really like a thin resin for this next part. Because what I like to do is I fill in the head, like in between the head there, with the Solares thin at first. Where'd it go? So I like the thin Solares for this because it's going to penetrate that dubbing and get down in it. And the easiest way to kind of do this is not on the vise. You want to kind of take it out and like use your hand to actually maneuver the fly around so that you can get the right angles. So I will pull that dubbing back and just get it in place, like the right shape head and everything I want, because you're pretty much going to solidify that head with this resin. So I'm going to start at the head here by the eye and work back very slowly. And what that's going to do is, if I do get the resin, you know, to grab a fiber, it's going to pull the fiber back in the direction I want it to go. So this is the thin, again, thin Solares. And we're going to start at the eye here of the hook and kind of push it into the dubbing. You know, it's going to look weird at first, but we haven't cured it yet. So get that down there, and just a little bit. We're just going to use a little at first like that. And then take your finger and kind of just work it in there and spread it back. But then wipe it off your fingers, because then you're going to grab this dubbing, work it back into the zone and the position that you want, and then we're going to cure it, and it's going to tack it in place. So now you have a hard resin chunk in between those eyes, keeping those eyes separate. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Start at the eye here and work your way back slowly, just adding resin and kind of working it into the dubbing. Okay, same thing, hit it with your finger, kind of smooth it out, smush it back, and then we're going to cure it. Okay, so now at this point, you've got two hard zones right there between the eyes, kind of holding the eyes apart slightly, but they can still move. So now I try and take a tiny bit more of the thin and just add it between there to bulk that up, just tiny bit. So very, very thin amount just to kind of cover up what you've just done. And it starts to build almost a mask around the eyes and kind of pins it all together. So the eyes will now not just kind of fall off or flake off or get picked off by a fish. They're kind of all one with the fly. Start with the bottom there. Get just enough to make it smooth. And this is thin again, so it does lay very flat. It's nice. Give it a sec to kind of have gravity do what it does best and make it go flat before you cure it. And then we're going to cure that. One more little bit of the thin on the top just to solidify the eyes in there again and almost create a mask. Then we're going to do one more coat of Bone Dry Plus over this, and what that's going to do is just pin everything together 100% so it's never going to come apart. So now we got the whole head on there, it's all built, you got to fly, but we're going to make it bulletproof with just a little more of the Bone Dry Plus. And now I'm going to coat the eyeballs, like the eyes itself, I'm going to coat them all the way back to the back of the eye, trying not to get it on the actual dubbing because it'll create a hard spot in your dubbing. So we're going to just put a tiny bit on the eyes and kind of work it around, keeping the fly level because this stuff's very thin, so it has a tendency to kind of go where it wants to if you give it the chance to. So you're going to cover that whole eye, and then right around the edges of the eye where you've connected it. And we're going to give it that, and then it's going to cure really quick. And now that's not tacky. So, you know, when you grab it later or you're tying it on or something, it's not going to leave your finger residue or like a, you know, kind of a gunky film. So now we're going to flip it, and we're going to do the same thing on the other eye. Just kind of coating the eye. Got a little on the dubbing, so you might get to see what happens when you get a little on the dubbing. Holding it level. Cure that. And then all I'm going to do to absolutely finish it is take a little bit more of this, and I'm going to put it in between the eye or the head on the top and the bottom, between the eyes, just to kind of get rid of a little bit of that tackiness that we have going on there. And this is like very, very sparingly. Use this as little as you can because it is very thin and it's very effective. And that is it. So now, what you're left with is a fly that's pretty much the most weedless streamer I've come across so far. The head is solid, and when the body is bit in the center, it's got a wide open hook gap, but it is blocked for the most part as it is swimming, so it's not noticeable. So really, really good fly for heavy cover, for bass or pike, you know, that type of stuff, obviously in this colorway. But yeah, pretty killer one on that new Arex Texas Predator hook. Pretty fun one to tie too. Give it a try.